Hello and welcome back to Bossing English with Mr. F. Today, OCR A-Level English Literature, Shakespeare, Section B, question. So we'll be looking at this via Hamlet, but if you're doing another text, that could also apply as well. It's more how to answer, planning and responding, including a model answer that I've just typed up. Here's the question. Hamlet is a play about indecision. Using your knowledge of the play as a whole, show how far you agree with this view of Hamlet. Remember to support your answer with different interpretations. So they give you a prompt there that for the AO5. We'll just look at those AOs quickly. So there's only two AOs, AO1 and AO5. Each get 50% weighting. AO1 is your argument, how you structure that argument, making it coherent, using critical concepts, terminology, and using appropriate language, the right register, and putting all that together to make a kind of fluent, coherent response. And AO5, different interpretations of the text. Well, this is really talking about film adaptations, theatrical adaptations you may have seen, even radio adaptations or animated versions of the play. Could even think about paintings in there as well. Hamlet has received lots of interest from painters over time, as well as critical views of the text. And this could be named critics, this could be critical theories, like literary theories, like feminist, Marxist, psychoanalytic readings of the play. But it can also include your own interpretations and those of your peers as ways of reading and looking at the play. So they're the two things that we've got to kind of bring together here. All right, so in this particular question, we have a theme, right? Indecision. And then we have this prompt here, how far you agree, so to what extent. That's basically that means. So you don't have to agree with it, you could argue against it. So we need to think thematically in this instance. I have seen questions where it's a character. Themes still apply to characters, but there we might be thinking more about what characteristics does that character have or symbolize. But here we're thinking thematically. So we have the question prompts. We also have section A, which will be linked to the theme, to the section B question, whether it's a theme or characters. We can always refer back to the thing we've just read, the extract we just read, to inspire us and give us a starting point to think about this question. And then we need to think about where else, the play as a whole. So we've got the beginning of the play, the middle of the play, the end of the play, and we'd probably want to have some references to different parts of the play in order to qualify the play as a whole. We need to think critically, i.e. we need to have our own ideas and those ideas of others, academic critics. So we need to have concepts. Maybe we might be thinking about a psychoanalytic reading of the play, and maybe the critical opinions of Freud there would be useful, or other psychoanalytic critics, for example. So that would be useful. We also need to think dramatically. The play is meant to be performed. We see performance of it, whether on film or on the stage. So we might have terms and concepts linked to dramatic performance for our AO1 and AO5. Hopefully you've seen different film versions, stage versions, if you've been lucky enough to see that. And if you look around on BBC iPlayer or BBC Sounds, the radio app, you can look around for Hamlet adaptations. You maybe find some kind of modern takes on the play that could be useful for you for this question. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of that, move up. All right, so in order to answer this question, I suppose what we're really thinking is, what's your big idea about the play and indecision? Do you agree or disagree? You can kind of sketch out some ideas for that, but really I would already have an idea going into the exam about how I've thought about major themes like madness or revenge or indecision or indecisiveness, things like that. Again, you should already, as part of your revision, have short quotes such as there's something rotten in the state of Denmark, or murder most foul, things like this. Which critical comment and references to film, again, as part of your revision, I'm sure you've already got some. It's good to have a range, I think. Here I've got Branner's famous version, we can find clips on YouTube from '96. Gregory Duran's version, that's with David Tennant in 2009, which is a very different version to the film version. And then Sarah Frankham's 2015 version with a female Hamlet in Maxine Peake, and obviously more of a feminist take. We might say gender diverse or gender fluid version of the play. Okay, moving on, let's look at planning for this question. So here, one useful thing is to think about how you can argue against, challenge the obvious. So, Hamlet is a play about decision. That's basically saying, is Hamlet a play about decision? You might say, well, yes, of course, it seems that way because we see Hamlet being indecisive here, X, and here, Y. However, isn't it really about a new thoughtfulness and the decision-making process because of Z, A, and B? Whoops. Yeah. So that's my take on this. That's my big idea. My big idea is actually what we're being shown is thoughtfulness. We might say in modern language, mindfulness, deliberation, being more conscious of thinking before acting. That may appear as indecisive, but actually is why he becomes to be seen as someone who would have proved most royal by the end of the play. So it's a maturing mind that we're witnessing on the stage. How would I support that? What was I thinking of at moments of indecision? Well, I would look at the moments of decisiveness, the really stupid ones when he kills Polonius by mistake, doesn't he, in the closet with Gertrude. And the critics linked to that, well, you'd have Freud. Critics linked to indecision. Coleridge talks about endless reasoning and hesitation. That's a nice, short, memorable quote there. You'll see that in my model answer. So there, like Freudian interpretation, the idea of acting rash and with passion leads him astray. So really, we get all those soliloquies where he's thinking in front of us and he's weighing up the pros and cons of like to be or not to be, whether it's suicide or Claudius's death. There's the two readings, isn't there? But what we're being given is that weighing up of and thoughtfulness about that. So particularly to be or not to be. There. Okay, so you can see how I'm fleshing out ideas. So I think that nothing is good or bad. So I might put my quotes here, any short quotes I was going to use. Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And some references to the play, but also any kind of concepts. So I'm thinking maybe here, more psychoanalytic. In terms of AO5, when we see the thought process here, these two can link together with... I'm running out of space here, aren't I? With the mirror that's used in the Kenneth Branagh version, that shows us that kind of self-reflectivity, quite literally, symbolically, and also the dagger, which is kind of literally held in the hand as if he's weighing up justice in that way. And we can also look at the genre here. So Enda AO1, it's a revenge tragedy, but Shakespeare is playing around with the form. He's not just doing another standard revenge tragedy. He's more thoughtful himself as a playwright than that. Okay, let's have a look at my model answer and see how I kind of put some of those ideas together. Hopefully you can see all of that. Okay, I'll put that on there so we can pull out some bits that are good. Hamlet's indecision has become a piece of received wisdom passed on between generations of critics and viewers. Why? Because of the missed opportunities to kill Claudius in the chapel in Act 3, because of the slow and measured way Hamlet plots revenge via the mousetrap, and because of the many soliloquies in which Hamlet discloses his divided thoughts and feelings to the audience. So there's that kind of idea that we're talking about a play here. I mentioned the audience, and I'm using some terminology there. And yet, surely what we are being shown is not indecisiveness, but thoughtfulness. So this is my thesis statement here. This is my main idea. My big idea that I'm going to demonstrate and argue persuasively why I think this in distinction to indecision, which is the question. The all-important conscience, there's an embedded quote there, that can catch a king or make cowards of us all. Another embedded quote showing reference to the play as a whole is revealed to the audience as it, that's his conscious, his moral law within, reacts to events. So I get some AO5 in here. I'll just change colour here. The romantic poet, I suppose, the romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge bemoaned this endless reasoning and hesitating, but Shakespeare presents Hamlet as a Renaissance man, so there's a kind of critical concept. Learning to assume his responsibilities by weighing up the pros and cons of every act, including his father's desire for the bloody vengeful death of Claudius. Okay, so more AO5 here at the start of the next paragraph. In Kenneth Browther's 1996 adaptation, we see this literal thought process in clever meta-theatrical ways. So there's a kind of academic register and critical concept there. Hamlet performs the to be or not to be soliloquy before a mirror, symbolizing, so that's a reference there, isn't it? But I'll change back to this. Symbolizing, that's terminology, both Hamlet's divided self and his constant self-questioning of his duties to God, life, and his dead father. His literal use of a bare bodkin dagger is emblematic of the weighing up of pros and cons of two possible acts, suicide or revengeful murder for his own murder most foul. Boo-boo there. In this way, Shakespeare reimagines, so this is more of AO1, critical concept to do with genre, reimagines what a revenge tragedy can be, playful, reflective, self-aware. So indecision here can be seen, so now I think that's quite clever there, coming back to the question, because it could look like I'm answering a different question if I'm not careful, because I'm talking a lot about thoughtfulness, deliberation, us watching his thought processes, and I'm arguing that that's not indecision, that's something Shakespeare wants us to see. So indecision here can be seen with a questioning of revenge per se, and of course ensuring that it is his father and not the devil leading him astray. You remember that, I think it's the end of Act 2, he becomes aware that this could be a trick. The critic Catherine Belsey has said that revenge in the play is crude, extravagant, and wildly in excess of justice. So there's another bit of AO5, another reference critic. And what you'll notice is, like with Coleridge, I introduce my critics, the romantic poet and the critic. I suppose I could call her an academic as well, because she is. And Hamlet's preternaturally modern conscious seems painfully aware of this. So there's that kind of elevated language for AO1, preternaturally, more than is natural, modern conscience, and the idea of modernity there. Hamlet exists in the long shadow of his father's earlier chivalric code of acting with the sword rather than the mind, as he did against old Fortinbras. That's in the duel when he killed him. But Hamlet is Renaissance man, critical concept to return to. Careful thought should precede action, even if this appears mad to us. Indeed, it is when Hamlet acts rashly without forethought that things go wrong, such as with Polonius's death in Act 3. Shakespearean critic A.C. Bradley says the prince's downfall is connected to his intellectual nature and reflective habit rather than yielding to any passion, which is at odds with this murderous error. So I'm arguing against the critic A.C. Bradley here. Freudian interpretations, that's more AO5 in terms of readings, would find it hard to explain Polonius's death in such a cool light, given the proximity of Gertrude at this moment, as well as modern performance's preference for setting the scene in her bedroom. Thus, the lack of thought may stem from Oedipal passions. Indeed, when such passions trump his thoughtful indecision, nice return to the question keyword there. Whoops, look, we lost everything then. Hamlet appears weaker and poorer for it. Any indecision on Hamlet's part is also created by the duplicitous world of the court of Elsinore. In Gregory Durand's 2009 version, the court is surveilled by CCTV cameras to emphasise this claustrophobic atmosphere where constant surveillance of Claudius via Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Polonius requires Hamlet to constantly outthink others. I haven't really developed that point. I'm not even necessarily sure it's a good one. It's allowed me to get some AO5 in, but I haven't really fully fleshed that out. So in order for this to be valid in any way, I would really need to pin that back more to my thesis statement about thoughtfulness as opposed to indecision. And I haven't really done that there, but I wanted to show you that. Anyway, coming to a kind of conclusion at the end, I return to where I started with the Coleridge quote. This endless reasoning, perhaps a scholarly habit learnt at Wittenberg, as you can see, there's some boo-boos here, is problematic, and Hamlet is conscious of this. Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Yet by the end of the play, Fortinbras concludes that Hamlet would likely have proved most royal. If so, this is because Hamlet has matured from the start from student and naive princeling to a future king who acts with the thoughtfulness modern kingship requires. So I think I've kind of returned to my AO1, so I think I've definitely nailed that. A developed answer that's coherent. I think there were definite possibilities to talk a bit more about other moments of indecision and maybe but return back in doing so to arguing why all those soliloquies maybe show us thought in action, and that's a form of action, not indecision. So I think I could have hammered that a bit more. Hopefully that's been useful. I'll probably be back with an extract question, so a section A question very soon. That's all for now. Smash that subscribe button, tickle the like button, and leave a comment, and bye for now.